Kia ora and welcome to Wellywood Wargaming. My name is Damon and we're here today to talk about the game, the one true game, the game that we all love, Necromunda. Now, I'm going to do a series of videos called Sump, Banter, and each episode I'm going to discuss a different element of the game, whether it's weapons and equipment, whether it's the individual gangs themselves, starting lists, how to run a campaign, all sorts of things. And hopefully, with your help and your comments and enthusiasm, I can help answer some of the questions as someone who's played and arbitrated Necromunda campaigns for quite a while now in the new edition of the game. So again, a lot of these things are just my opinion. It comes from a position of having played the game a lot in physical terms, and lots of campaigns have been run here in Wellington in New Zealand. And so again, you might disagree with me on some of these things. This is just my opinion. And of course, the community is awesome and we love the support. So comments are always welcome in these videos as well. So we're going to get into it with this episode. I thought it would be a good time to discuss skills. So we're going to actually talk about the main 8 skill trees that are available in Necromunda for all the house gangs, basically, and some of the non-house gangs as well. So I've actually got the book right here in front of me. Of course, we're going to the big rule book here. But I'm just going to talk through each skill tree, as they're called, as they're referred to, in turn, and just kind of explain what the skills do, how good they are, how bad they are, and basically just give you an overview of the skills in the game so that you're a bit more familiar with how to use them in practical terms, because a lot of the stuff that's written down on paper in these rule books can be conflicted. Some of it needs to be errated, as we know. Games Workshop's proofreaders are not that great, if I may say so. So there is a bit of that going on as well sometimes. So you've got to be aware of that. Rules do change a little bit sometimes as well, and there's always someone who interprets things in their own way, and that's fine. But generally speaking, it's kind of all common sense. Anyway, we're going to start with the first one. We're going to go alphabetically. We're going to start with agility. Now, the agility skill tree is one of the sort of mid to better skill trees, I'd say, out of the 8. It's available mainly to gangs like Escher and a couple of others as well. Escher being the one that stands out in my head, though, as the agile gang, I suppose. The first skill in the agility skill tree is Catfall. So we're just going to go through them in order. Catfall, I'm going to read from the actual book here. When this fighter falls or jumps down from a ledge, they count the vertical distance moved as being half of what it actually is, rounded up. In addition, if they're not seriously injured or taken out of action by a fall, make an initiative test for them. If it's passed, they remain standing rather than being prone or pinned. So I think you can already see that there's a glaring problem with this skill, in that it has absolutely no use on a non-3D board. I'm hoping most of you play Necromunda on 3D terrain. It is intended for 3D terrain. Of course, I have played it on tiles as well, and it's still good, but it's, in my opinion, much better played on actual 3D big terrain with densely packed terrain, basically. So this has a use on that 3D terrain. It's definitely not one of the best skills in the game. It's kind of nice, but you're basically relying on failure here. So the only time, it's very situational. The only time you're really going to use a skill like this is to try and save your neck after jumping off a building. But, you know, why would you jump off a building or stand that close to the edge anyway, I suppose? Of course, knockback exists. You're quite easily going prone at the top of a ledge and perhaps falling off. But the thing is, if you're a gang that has agility skills, usually you have high initiative anyway, which means that you're less likely to fall off stuff. So if you think about it from that perspective, it's not a very good skill. Yeah, you could take it for fluffy reasons, and most of these skills you could take for fluffy reasons. But this one's just kind of bad. So I'd just give this one a miss if I was playing Escher or something. There are much better options on this skill tree that I'll go to now. The second one on this list is Clamber. Now, at a glance, Clamber looks kind of meh, but I'm going to read out what Clamber actually does. So, when this fighter climbs, the distance they move is not halved. In other words, they don't have to climb, they just walk straight up a building. Now, on 3D terrain, that only works on 3D terrain, it doesn't work on 2D terrain. So, it's pretty amazing considering that 3D terrain tends to be dominated by snipers, people with long rifles, long lasers, things like this. So if you can have a really scary melee fighter, for example, who can run up a 3-story building in one turn and slay your sniper that's controlling the entire board, it's a pretty good skill for that. So, for example, in our campaign, we have a Delak Nachtgul who has Clamber, infiltrates to the bottom of a building that your long rifle is at, for example, or grenade launcher or whoever else, runs up the building and just slashes you in half. And it's a pretty scary, fearsome skill when you pair it with something like that. So definitely one that's worth a thought. It's a very easy skill to understand as well. Nothing funny going on there. No rules, misinterpretations you can make with that. The third skill in the agility table is dodge. Now, dodge is an excellent skill, I think, because it's a passive skill. It's something that you get for free, basically, and it helps your fighters survive. I'm just going to read out what it does. If this fighter suffers a wound from a ranged or close combat attack, roll a d6. On a 6, the attack is dodged and has no further effect. Otherwise, continue to make a save or resolve the wound as normal. In addition, this interacts with templates, so instead of making that dodge roll, you actually get a free 2-inch move outside of the template if you're lucky. Obviously, if you're centered on a 5-inch template, that's going to be very difficult, but you know, if you get hit by a flamer and you're on the edge of it, then you can dodge out of the way of that flamer, and that is very, very powerful. And again, it's like just having a skill that aids in your survival in a campaign is really, really helpful. In a one-off game, but in a campaign where you've got a leader who's very vulnerable, just having that extra thing before you even make a save roll is really cool. So dodge is definitely gets the thumbs up for me. I've got it on my current leader. She comes with dodge, and it's been quite useful. She's managed to dodge some pretty big shots from some pretty big weapons that might have taken her out. Of course, it only works when you don't need it to work, and usually doesn't work when you do need it to work, but that's just how 6s work on a d6. The next one in agility, number 4, is Mighty Leap. And again, similar to Catfall in a lot of ways, when measuring the distance of a gap this fighter wishes to leap across, ignore the first 2 inches of the distance. This means that a fighter with this skill may leap over gaps of 2 inches or less without testing their initiative. So it means that the first 2 inches of your move is initiative free as well, if you think about it like that, but there aren't many times that you're going to really want to leap gaps on high buildings, because the fall is probably going to kill you if you're over 3 inches or whatever it is. If you're several stories up, don't leap gaps. Just don't do it unless you're like a Juve and you're not really caring about dying. It can be great in a pinch, but again, it's not a tier 1 skill. I wouldn't take it, except for maybe fluffy reasons, but it is what it is. Moving on to the next one. This one's one of my favorites in the whole bunch of skills, actually, and it's Spring Up. Now, Spring Up, when you are hit by a shot, basically, and you go pinned, you are able to make an initiative check. If successful, you remain standing. Sorry, I'm actually getting that wrong. I'm confused with Nerves of Steel. I should just be reading from the book, shouldn't I? Basically, as soon as you activate, you take an initiative test. As soon as you pass that initiative test, you stand up for free. So it doesn't take you an action, basically. So, of course, this isn't very good on someone with low initiative like a Goliath, who's a 5+ or 4 or 5+. But on an Escher Death Maiden, who's got a 2+ initiative, who's just been pinned with a stab gun shot or whatever, but she's in charging range, you get to stand up for free on a 2+ and then charge. And it's incredibly powerful. Really, really good skill. That's all it does, but it's very, very powerful. Very similar to Nerves of Steel in the Ferocity tree. They're both great. I'd say Nerves of Steel overall wins, but we'll go into that and the reasons why, and that really just comes down to number crunching, to be honest. The last one in the agility skill tree is Sprint. Now, Sprint is kind of cool. So Sprint means that instead of a double move, you basically get a triple move. So it's not worded in that way. If this fighter makes 2 move simple actions, so if you make a double move, when activated during a round, you can use the second. To sprint. So basically, you get to move and then double move. That's the way it's written. So you technically, if you had a fighter that had a 6-inch movement, you get 6, 12, 18 movement, which is ridiculous. So team that with Clamber, for example, and you can run up a 5-story building or whatever. It's pretty cool. It's great for out positioning and out maneuvering people. Again, really good skill for Escher because they are that hit and run gang who like to reposition with their las guns and pin people and stuff. Really, really gets great skill there. And that's the agility tree basically. So really, I would say that there are 2 or 3 tier 1 to tier 2 skills in there that I would take on a lot of fighters, particularly on an Escher gang, you know, a high agility, high initiative gang. So that's cool. We're going to move on to the worst skill tree now, and it is the worst skill tree. I'm not just saying that just to be funny, but Brawn is by far the weakest skill tree for a number of reasons. Basically, all the skills in there are fairly useless. So we're just going to get straight into it. The first one, however, on the list is the best of the Brawn skills, in my opinion, and that is Bull Charge. Now, Bull Charge, when you make a charge action, you get to trigger knockback with your hits. So in similar way to a long rifle or a solid shot from a shotgun, you get to knockback. Now, the reason why that's good is that you can line people up and slap them into a wall and get extra damage, like you've seen in our battle reports. You can also knock people off ledges. But the main thing it's good for is charging someone and not having to suffer reaction attacks if you don't kill them. So if that fighter that you're charging has already activated, they won't get those free reaction attacks. However, if they haven't activated yet, then sure, they can charge you back or shoot you back or whatever. But it's pretty cool. It also gives you +1 strength when you're hitting them as well, only on a charge though. But really good skill. Unfortunately, Brawn skills, you know, Goliath get them, Cawdor get them on their champions for some reason, and Cawdor champions have better ballistic skill than they do weapon skill. So you're kind of like, why would I give that to a shooter with a long rifle? Again, like, it's the best pick of a bad bunch, to be honest. The second one is Bulging Biceps. Now, Bulging Biceps in old Necromunda used to be amazing. It was basically a free suspenser on heavy weapons, so you could carry a heavy weapon and shoot and move and shoot. Now, however, it doesn't do that. It basically means that you can wield an unwieldy weapon in one hand rather than the usual 2. Note that the unwieldy weapon still takes up the space of 2 slots. It's just terrible. Yeah, sure, you can have 2 renderizers or whatever, but you can't because it takes up 2 slots. So if you have... yeah, anyway, I'm not even going to go into that one. It's obviously bad. It's obviously bad. We all know it's bad. It needs to be changed. It should go back to the way that it used to be, although arguably that was too powerful. So I don't know. How much is a dispenser at the trading post? Not sure. Quite expensive, I think. How much is a skill worth? I don't know. So and I think the dispenser definitely costs more than a skill. So we'll get into that at another point. But number 3, Crushing Blow. Now, Crushing Blow. Before rolling to hit for the fighter's close combat attacks, the controlling player can nominate 1 dice to make a crushing blow. This cannot be a dice that is rolling for a weapon with a pistol trait. If that dice hits, the attack's strength and damage is increased by 1. It's okay. It's okay. Not much to talk about there, really. I mean, you get extra damage and extra strength, but take Bull Charge because you can still get extra damage and you do get extra strength. But you get to maybe knock people off stuff and don't get hit back. So Bull Charge is a much better version of that. Sure, you don't get the extra damage every single time, but you know, if you play it right and you line it up, then you absolutely will. So I'd say Bull Charge is a much better pick over Crushing Blow. I mean, it's okay. It's fluffy. It's okay, but I personally wouldn't bother with it over other skills. If I was given nothing else to choose from, then yeah, maybe. Number 4 is Headbutt. Now, Headbutt is a bit of an odd one. Again, you're never really going to use it. It's kind of cool for a fluffy, fun character, and it does have a lot of flavour. So Headbutt. Headbutt is a basic action. You get to pick an engaged enemy fighter and roll 2d6. If either result is equal to or higher than their toughness, they suffer a hit with strength equal to this fighter +2, resolved at damage 2. However, if both dice score lower than the enemy fighter's toughness, this fighter instead suffers a hit equal to their own strength, resolved at damage 1. So, I mean, I think Ogryns get it out of the box, but I mean, yeah, like when are you going to do that? When in this game are you going to do that? You're not. You're just not going to. Why would you take a risk like that? And again, it's funny. So yeah, sure, use the funny one. But yeah, it doesn't get my vote on that one at all. Next up we have Hurl. Now Hurl, if the fighter is standing and engaged, they can make the following action. Again, basic action, so you can only do it once. Pick an enemy fighter engaged by in base contact this fighter or a seriously injured enemy fighter within 1 inch of this fighter. Make an initiative check for the enemy fighter. If failed, the enemy fighter is hurled. Move the enemy fighter D3 in a direction of your choice. If they were standing, they become prone and pinned after moving. If they come into base contact with a standing fighter or any terrain, they stop moving and suffer strength 3 damage 1 hit. If they come into base contact with another fighter, that fighter also suffers a strength 3 damage 1 hit and becomes prone and pinned. But you can throw people off buildings, which is really fun. Again though, it's so situational, you're very rarely going to get a chance to use it. I've never seen it used. I've had it on guys, but I've never seen it used. Again, I've had it on Corridor champions with crossbows, and they're never going to have an opportunity for it to be used, because usually they're keeping you at arm's length with a bloody missile launcher. So if you manage to get close enough to them, you're going to tear them a new one anyway, because chances are you're a better fighter than they are, because all they've got is a heavy crossbow. So we won't go into the nitty gritty of that one, but I mean it's not great, is it? It's okay. It's fun though. Just like Headbutt, it's very similar, but it's it's fun. The thing about Hurl is there aren't really any risks in having it. You know, it's not going to hurt you, but it's okay. It's okay. So the last one in the Brawn skills list, skills tree, is Ironjaw. Now Ironjaw, the fighter's toughness is treated as being too higher than normal when another fighter makes unarmed attacks against you. Now my current gang, if I think about all the gang's fighters, all the gangers in our current campaign, hardly any of them are unarmed. Some of them are unarmed, some of them are armed with a pistol or a close combat weapon, but generally speaking, most people have a stub gun, a las pistol, or an auto pistol, so they can at least hit you in close combat with that. But there are very few opportunities, again, where you're going to get hit by someone with bare hands. Usually, you're getting hit by a renderizer or a power sword or paired chain cleavers. So again, it's not really going to help you there. If it did, that would be great, but it doesn't, so don't use it. Moving on. Moving on. So my opinions are quite strong because I love this game. So yeah, basically. Moving on to the next skill set, number 3. This is combat. Combat is very similar to agility in a lot of ways, I feel. They usually come together as well, and they certainly do with Escher. They get lots of combat access, I believe. But yeah, here's the combat skills. First up, we've got Combat Master. Now, Combat Master, the fighter never suffers penalties to their hit rolls for interference. So basically, if you're getting gang mobbed, you don't get minuses to hit back, which is kind of cool. I have seen it pin a lot of fighters down, and you can also grant assists as well, even if you're engaged lots too. So it basically negates the minuses associated to being mobbed by people in close combat. So I have seen Venator leaders with twin power swords, etc., taking on 5 guys and just literally killing one each turn. It has happened, but again, it's very situational. If someone's got if someone's got Combat Master and they're really, really dangerous, just don't mob them. Just shoot them instead. Kind of common sense, that one. But again, it's okay. It's okay. It's a fluffy skill. I quite like it, but it's certainly not a tier 1 skill. 2. Counterattack. When this fighter makes reaction attacks in close combat, they roll 1 additional attack dice for each of the attacker's attacks that failed to hit, whether they missed, were parried, etc. Again, you're relying on your opponent to fail, and most of the time with the new version of the game, where you've got super champions that all hit on 2s with 5 or 6 attacks, yeah, just you're not gonna do it. You're not usually gonna get reaction attacks against guys like Dilak Nakhtgals or Death Maidens. You're just not going to get attacks back against them, ever. So, good luck using that one, basically. 3. Disarm. So this gives you Disarm. So any weapons with the melee trait used by this fighter gain the Disarm trait. If a weapon already has this trait, then the target will just be disarmed on a natural roll of 5 or a 6 instead of a 6. Now Disarm is kind of cool. It means that they can't use their weapons to fight back, basically. It's quite cool. Again, it's quite situational. I think if you're using like something that does have Disarm, like an axe or whatever, Having this is quite cool because Disarm on a 5-up is quite nice, but again, it's certainly not tier 1. It's certainly not very exciting. I probably forget I had it most of the time. I've never used it. I probably will never use it. It's one of those things. Moving on to number 4, it's parry. Now parry is really a bit better than Disarm, obviously. Parry means that you can force your opponent to re-roll one of their successful hit rolls. Now, if you have parry on its own, it's kind of like, you know, gives you a chance of surviving a hit in close combat. Now if you have parry with a parry weapon, however, you get to parry twice, which is really cool. Now that means you're really, really hard to hurt. I think Lady Credo has parry and a power sword, so she gets to parry twice. So you ain't going to charge into her anyway because she's lethal, but quite nice to have 2 parries. But the parry skill, it's useful. I would take it on someone you want to keep alive, or you know. But again, if you're getting charged by a Corpse Grinder leader who's got paired heavy chain cleavers and they've got 6 attacks or whatever, not even mentioning the other tactics cards or skills that they get to make them have even more buffs, you're just getting killed no matter how many parries you're making, you know, because if they're hitting you on 2s, see you later, basically. But yeah, it's a good skill. Parry is a good skill. It's one of the better ones in the combat list, I would say. Looking at this now and actually talking about it, I would say that agility is the better skill set than combat. Personally, I think it is anyway. I like the agility skills more, especially because I'm now playing on some really cool 3D terrain. The last second to last, Rain of Blows, means that you treat the fight action, which is basic, as a simple. So what that means is you can do 2 fight actions in 1 activation. So if, for example, you are locked in combat with someone, you get to fight and then fight again. Again, in the current game, with these super champions and supercharged stimmers and whatnot, you're very rarely going to survive the first round of combat to be locked in combat. It happens between Jews and gangers with no close combat weapons, but meh, you're not going to take it most of the time. I had it on a Corpse Grinder champion with the rotary flinching saw, and the reason why it was good on him is because I could use his versatile. So it's really good on versatile because you can basically whip the thing around at 4-inch range and then do it again at 4-inch range if you don't happen to kill that person the first time. So that can be quite cool. There's potential for shenanigans with versatile. So there you go. Worth thinking about. And the last one in the combat list is Step Aside. Now, if the fighter is hit in close combat, the fighter can attempt to step aside, make an initiative check for that fighter. If the check is passed, the attack misses. The skill can be used once per enemy action. So if someone hits you with 6 attacks, you're only stepping out of the way of one of them, basically. Again, it's okay. It's not as good as dodge. If you compare that to dodge, dodge does, you know, it's just a 6-up, whereas this is your initiative check. Dodge, I think you get a dodge for every hit though, don't you? So if someone's hitting you many times, maybe you get to dodge them all. Something like that anyway. So you only get to use this once basically. So it's okay if someone's hitting you with 1 attack and you get a chance to do it, then great. But if they're hitting you with multiple attacks and you've already been hit multiple times, then chances are one of those other wounds is going to go through as well. It's better than some of the others. I would say my pick out of the combat ones is Parry and Combat Master are the two better ones. Combat Master is quite helpful to have, quite useful to have on a leader, particularly just to help out not getting mobbed by a bunch of Cawdor Juves, which happens a lot. So, onto the Cunning skill tree, which definitely is one of my favourites. Cunning is the main one that Genestealer Cult get, Chaos Helots get, and of course my favourite Delac get. So this is the sneaky skill tree. 1. Backstab. Not one of the most useful ones. Any weapon used by this fighter with the melee trait also gains the backstab trait. So it's very similar to Disarm. Backstab, if they already have this trait, add 2 to the attacker's strength. So backstab, basically, the way the rules are written when you charge someone is you have to take the most direct route. So unless you're right behind somebody, which is very rare in this game, because usually people are facing you because they're facing which direction you're coming from, you're not going to get an option to hit them in the back. Sometimes you do, but it's pretty rare. You can't charge round things anymore. You have to take the most direct route. People used to be able to charge round the building, like, you know, charge round to hit them in the back with enough movement. You can't do that anymore. You have to charge via the most direct route, which I think is a really good rule change from when Necromunda I think first got released, because you could charge in zigzags and whatnot. But yeah, backstab. It's not great. You get it on a fighting knife, I believe. Anyway, but if you have a fighting knife and you add +2 to your strength, so you could pretend, you know, if you got a strength 4 guy, for example, you're wounding on 2s all of a sudden, which could be useful, but not many guys have strength 4 out of the box. So it actually is quite negligible, because strength 4 and strength 5 both wound most people on 3s. So think of it that way. But you know, it is what it is. Again, it's as useful as Disarm. I'd say it's less useful as Disarm actually, because you're never really going to find yourself charging somebody from behind that often. Sometimes, maybe, yeah. The second one is Escape Artist. Now, Escape Artist, when this fighter makes a retreat basic action, add 2 to the result of their initiative check. A natural 1 still fails. Additionally, if this fighter is captured at the end of the battle and they're equipped with a skin blade, they may add 1 to the result. So, it's quite good. If you get locked in combat, you get to escape a bit easier, but again, very situational, and you're relying on something bad happening in the first place. Don't let that bad thing happen. And to be honest, if you're fairly useless in close combat and you get stuck in close combat, you shouldn't have survived. You should have been killed, and you deserve to be killed for getting locked into combat. You need to avoid that shit. Don't let it happen. Sorry, these are very very strong opinions I have about this game, but I'm very passionate about it, like I said. Number 3, Evade. Now, Evade is a very good skill, I think. Evade, basically, if you're standing and active and not in any cover, you're -1 to hit. If you're long range, standing and active and not in any cover, you're -2 to hit, which is really annoying, because really, you know, on a big dense board, you know, people are finding it hard to hit you anyway, but that just makes it even harder. And interestingly with this, you know, infrasights and stuff don't help because you're not in cover, so you've always got that -1, that -2 to hit you, just standing in the open, which is really good. Great for Delac. It's a cunning skill. It's on Selby's Delac leader at the moment. I've found him really hard to pin down in other games. Very hard to hit the guy. He just dodges around and he stays in full cover, and he hardly ever gets hit by stuff. So again, it's not really going to make a difference with template weapons, because template weapons don't have to target the fighter. So grenade launchers and flamers are going to still get you, but it's a really good skill. It's a really good skill. I like it a lot. It's passive. You know, you don't have to make any dice rolls. It just happens. So you're always -1 to hit in the open. You're always -2 to hit at long range in the open. Very cool. I like it a lot. I would say it's up there, to be honest. I think a lot of people disregard Evade, but I like it. The next one, 4, is Infiltrate. Now, Infiltrate means that after everybody's set up, you get to lay your fighter any way you like. I think it's within, yeah, so you've got to be out of 6 inches from an enemy fighter, and you've got to be out of line of sight as well. But the problem I found with Infiltrate, it's an excellent skill. It's an excellent skill, because you can, you know, outmaneuver from the very first turn of the game. However, what I've found with Infiltrate is that you can get trigger happy with it, and you can use it when you probably shouldn't use it. It's too easy to go, oh yeah, I'll just push this guy up the board, and then you get isolated and you're fucked. Which happens more often to me. But if you're very, you know, obviously if you have a sniper with a long rifle who's got Infiltrate, then you can put them on the top of a building, great, and they're cool, they're sweet. But sometimes you just don't want to use it. Sometimes it's actually better to have it as a psychological tool before you set up, and then actually not use it and just set up normally. That really messes with people's heads. Why would he not use it? Bit of a chess move, that one. Again, you're probably better off using it, but you don't have to use it. You don't have to trigger it, you know. You have the option of not using it. So don't forget that you have the option of not using it. There you go. It can be a bit cheesy in some scenarios where, say, you have an objective and you infiltrate that guy next to the objective and make it infinitely easier for you from the off. That's kind of cheating to me. So some scenarios, your arbitrator should probably house rule that Infiltrate is broken with certain scenarios and just not use it, in my opinion. Lie low is the 5th one. While this fighter is prone, enemy fighters cannot target them with ranged attacks unless they are within the attacking weapon's short range. Weapons that do not have short range are unaffected by this rule. It's okay. It's okay. I don't really need to elaborate on that. It's pretty obvious what it does. You know, because in short range, if you're prone, there's no minuses to hit you. At long range, there is a minus to hit you if you're prone. And if you're prone and in cover, then you can't be hit anyway. So yeah, it's not great. It's not great, Lilo. It can pair quite nicely with certain things. You know, like Spring Up, for example, can work quite nicely with that. The last one, and probably arguably one of the best skills in the game, I would say, if not the best skill in the game, is Overwatch. Now, Overwatch in old Necromunda used to be an action. You could make an Overwatch action. So you could say, hey, this game is going to go on Overwatch for this turn, and then it would work this way. But Overwatch, if this fighter is standing and active, you can declare Overwatch as soon as someone declares a move, or not even just a move. As soon as they make an activation, basically, you get to make a shoot action then and there at the start of their move. So it is amazingly powerful because you're interrupting your opponent's plans. Yeah, you can't aim with it, but if you've got a sniper who's hitting on twos with a bloody infoscope or whatever, then you can really mess with people. And the best thing about Overwatch is the psychology element of just having it and not using it again. Like Infiltrate, having that sniper on a roof, having options on stuff that he can shoot at, and not letting them know which one you're going to shoot at really messes with people. And just, you know, when you've got a couple of guys with Overwatch with long range weapons, it is horrendously powerful. Doesn't often do that much damage because 9 times out of 10 you're not putting it on someone with very powerful weaponry. But the long rifles, the long lasers and stuff like that is quite typical to find on a Delac list, and it's such a great sneaky skill that really matches the Delac style of play. Definitely one of my favourite skills out of the entire bunch, if not my favourite. So there you go. That is Cunning. Moving on, we're now on Ferocity now, which I think, I'm going to say it, I think Ferocity is the best skill tree in the game. For these reasons. Berserker. Berserker, very simple, gives you an extra attack dice when you charge. I mean, you can't, it's good, right? It's not amazing, but it gives you an extra attack dice. It suddenly makes you a champion who's charging with just 2 attacks. You know, they've got 3 attacks all of a sudden, or even 4 or 5, I don't know, whatever. But it just having an extra attack dice. Attacks are very expensive skill increases for gangers and stuff. They cost 12 wounds and attacks, I think, costs 12 XP. So having a skill that just gives you an extra attack is really powerful. If you're a close combat gang, it's really good. So it's a solid skill. We then have Fearsome, which is not, this is probably the weakest one out of the bunch actually. Oh no, second weakest. Fearsome basically it gives you kind of like a corpse grinder mask, but instead of shooting it's just charging. So it gives you, if anyone makes a charge double action or declares a charge double action on you, that would result in making any more close combat attacks against the fighter. The attacker must make a willpower check. If they fail, they're left standing there basically, and they can't move, and their action ends immediately. So it's pretty cool. It's very fluffy, particularly if you're up against someone who has low willpower, like say Goliath or Ogryns. Very, very useful. If you don't want to get your fighter smushed by a big Ogryn charging towards you, then sure. Fearsome's not a bad one, to be honest. It's okay. This one's the worst one in the bunch though, Impetuous. Instead of having a 2-inch consolidation after you kill someone, or take someone out of action, you get 4 inches. You can move into better cover, I suppose. You can move around a corner, you can move into charging range of someone else, and then get priority and charge them again. It's pretty useful, but it's definitely the weakest skill out of the bunch in Ferocity. Because it's just like, you're going to use it, sure, but you know, it's not very powerful. It doesn't really give you a huge amount of, like, 2 inches is 2 inches. It's not massive. 4, Nerves of Steel. So when the fighter is hit by a ranged attack, make a cool check for them. If it is passed, they may choose not to be pinned. So very similar to Spring Up, except that you're just standing there. You never get pinned. It's incredibly good on something like an Orlok leader or a Goliath leader, or something that has really good cool. G-Steel Occult also have really good cool. Delac also have pretty good cool. But yeah, if you've got a cool of 4+ or 5+ on 2d6, the chances are you're standing most of the time. Which is why I think it's better than Spring Up. overall because it's a 2d6 roll instead of a 1d6 roll, and the best initiative that you can have is a 2-up, so there's always a 1 in 6 chance of failing that. And I've seen it happen much more than I've seen Nerves of Steel fail on a 4-up guy, for example. I'm not very good with the meta math hammer here, but you get what I'm saying. Nerves of Steel is just better than Spring Up most of the time, from a numbers perspective. I think. True Grit is the next one. True Grit. When making an injury roll for this fighter, roll 1 less injury dice. For example, a bolt gun that hits you with 2 damage is now hitting you on 1 damage. And if someone is hitting you with a 1 damage weapon, you get to roll 2 dice and choose your favourite, which is pretty cool. A player controlling the fighter with True Grit can then choose 1 dice to discard before the effects actually happen. So really, really cool. Really, really great skill. Great for survivability. I mean, 2 damage weapons are most of the time going to really bloody hurt you, unless you're very, very lucky. But having that ability to change a damage 2 weapon into a damage 1 weapon is so nice. I love True Grit. It's definitely a really, really good skill to have on a leader, particularly. And the last one in the bunch for Ferocity is Unstoppable. Now, Unstoppable basically gives you a sort of like Wolverine-like healing powers. So before making a recovery test, check for this fighter in the end phase, roll a d6. If the result is a 4 or more, 1 flesh wound is lost. So you get to regain toughness. And you know, flesh wounds are really important in this game. You can bleed out quite easily, just, you know, suffering flesh wound after flesh wound, and then bleeding out, which is really annoying. But this gives you your flesh wounds back on a 4-up, which is great. What's not to like about that? Yeah, that's basically that one. So moving on now to leadership. I have to turn the page here. This is very story time. This. Can you hear the pitter-pattering of the rain on the roof? Very, very romantic. Leadership. Commanding presence. When this fighter activates to make a group activation, they may include 1 more fighter than normal. So basically a leader can activate with 2 others normally, can now activate with 3 others. Now, group activating is something that you do in a clutch in Necromunda. Don't do it all the time because you're going to get out-activated, and action economy is a huge, huge part of this game in my opinion. I very rarely group activate. The only time I group activate nowadays is right at the start of a game when I want to get things moving and I want to just get players up the board, bodies up the board. I won't hardly ever group activate. I mean, it's useful, but again, the skill is not useful. Group activation is useful, but with 3 other guys, it's very rare that you're going to be standing around a whole bunch of guys. You know, like, just, nah, it's not a good skill. Inspirational. If a friendly fighter within 6 inches of this fighter fails a cool check, make a leadership check for this fighter. If the leadership check is passed, then the cool check also counts as having passed. Yeah, I mean, not great again. I mean, the leadership skills are not great in overall, I would say. There's only 1 in here that's very, 2 in here that are very good. I'm just going to skip that because there's no point talking about that one. 3 is Iron Will. Now this skill I do like. The trouble with Iron Will though is it feels like it feels a bit of like a, you feel a bit shortchanged if you take it on a leader in any game, because it's like, oh, I could have taken something more interesting. But Iron Will adds 1 to the result of the bottle test, so you basically have an extra, but it counts as your, say for example you have 6 starting in your crew. If you've got someone with Iron Will, you technically have 7 on paper, so it makes bottle rolls much harder to work. So if you're working with a small crew, Iron Will is great. Great for Venators, great for elite gangs that are quite likely to bottle off as soon as they get the first serious injury or whatever. Because yeah, you want to stick around, you want to play the game and you want to try and win it. So Iron Will, very good skill, but yeah, it feels like just such a waste to take it a lot of the time. You've then got Mentor. I quite like this one. It's very fluffy. Basically, a fighter who's within 6 inches of the guy with this skill. Make a leadership test for this fighter, and basically you gain an extra point of experience if you're within 6 inches of them. So that's quite cool. You can skill up your other fighters faster, but again, it's very situational. There aren't going to be many times. I've had it on a leader before, and I've actually forgotten to use it quite a few times. It's just one of those things you're going to forget about. It's nice to have in a long campaign where experience is very important, but yeah. You know, when you compare it to skills like Nerves of Steel or Spring Up, you're just not gonna do it. The next one is Overseer. Now, Overseer is a very powerful skill. we're not seeing any play of Overseer in our campaigns for a couple of years now because, quite frankly, it's almost broken. So Overseer basically, you can forego your activation to give someone nearby an extra activation, technically. So it means that you can move heavy weapons and shoot them. It means that you can get a flaming template into a better position. It is really, really powerful, very strategic, but feels really corny and really cheesy. And to be honest, if you give this to a leader, your leader's basically effectively just a guy who makes other people do stuff, which is cool if you're playing maybe Cawdor, where you want a weak leader and loads of templates around you. It works nicely for Cawdor from a fluffy perspective, I think, but it's just a cheesy skill, and you can do some really cheesy stuff with it. It's not going to earn you any friends. It's very powerful, but it's not that much fun. You know, people that use it on web guns and stuff, they're just not cool people. I'm not friends with those people. If that's you, then fine, that's great. And you'll be like, hey, I can use that because it's a legitimate skill and blah blah blah. Just don't, like, we just don't use it in our group. I don't know why. It's just an unwritten rule. No one said, hey, you can't use Overseer, but no one does. It just feels really cheap and tacky and awful, and not a friend thing to do. So there you go. But basically, it's a double action. You get to pick a friendly fighter within 6. That fighter can immediately make 2 actions as if they haven't made an action. So it's like using a tactics card every turn. It's really, really powerful. And then you've got Regroup, which is the 6th one in the leadership list. If this fighter is standing inactive at the end of their activation, the controlling player may make a leadership check for them. If the check is passed, each friendly fighter that is currently subject to broken condition and is within 6 inches immediately recovers from being broken. Now, it's worth noting, of course, that recovering from being broken is kind of cool because you get 1 XP for doing it. So think about that, because it does give you XP for recovering from being broken, but other than that, it's just so situational, and the fact that it has to be within 6 inches range is like, you're never using it. You're never using it. Okay, moving on to the last 2 now. There's a lot to get through here. I'm going through it quite quickly, and I'm giving you a real basic overview of these things. And again, these are all my opinions. You might heavily disagree with me, and you might love the Disarm skill, or you might love Lilo or whatever, but it's just my opinion. I've played a lot of Necromunda, and there you go. So this is the second or third best skill tree, I would say. Shooting is available for Vansar and a little bit of Delac, I think, but mainly Vansar because they're the shooty Tau kind of gang. The first one is Fast Shot. Now, Fast Shot is awesome. Fast Shot, this fighter treats the shoot action as simple, so you can shoot twice in a turn. Now, Fast Shot with like a grenade launcher, pow pow, 2 frag grenades, awesome. Fast Shot with a plasma gun, ooh, disgusting, but very high chance of running out of ammo, of course, luckily. But yeah, it's an amazingly powerful skill. I mean, you know, you can't do it with the unwieldy trait, of course. You can't do it with a heavy weapon, regardless. I don't think whether you've got a suspensor or not. Don't think it says anything about that. It says, yeah, not even with an item of war gear that allows you to do that. So you can't do it on a heavy weapon. They still have the unwieldy trait. But I mean, you know, a special weapon with some power, or even a bolt gun, something like that, it's just dreadful. I had it on a concussion carbine, and that was quite cool because I could ping two little 3-inch blast markers around. I quite like that one. I also had it on a grav gun on a Delac Champion, and I love grav guns. They're awesome. You might not like them. They are overpriced, I know, but they're very tactically sound, and I really like those kind of weapons. So yeah, weapons like that are really great with Fast Shot. But yeah, the plasma gun Fast Shot thing for Vansar is a thing, and again, it's kind of cheesy, but it's very, very good, very powerful. Gunfighter is the next one. So Gunfighter means that you can do the twin guns blazing. You can shoot 2 sidearms simultaneously at different people with no negatives to hit. So really, really great for those double plasma pistol wielding champions and stuff that you get. But yeah, the fact that you can do that with no negatives is really good. Even just having 2 stub guns and hitting on, you know, +2 to hits on two separate targets that are close by if you're in short range is really, really great. On just a ganger, you know, with someone with 4+ ballistic skills hitting 2 separate guys on a 2+ all of a sudden in short range, things like that. It's great. Of course, it only applies to the sidearm trait, so no, you can't do it with 2 hand flamers. That would be ridiculous. But then why would you have 2 hand flamers in the first place? That would be 150 50 credits or something. So yeah. Anyway, I'm rambling. It's what happens. It's late at night. I've had a lot of coffee today. Hip shooting is the third one. I love this one. It gives you a double action called run and gun. It means that you can double move and then shoot. You get -1 to hit on that shot. So you're not really going to use this as weapons that require ballistic skill. You're going to use it with templates. So your web gun, your flamer. Weapons you can move 8 to 10 inches and then squirt the web gun at someone. It is disgusting and very, very, very horrific when in the right hands. But again, it's a legitimate skill. It's very, very powerful. It's definitely one of the best skills when you combine it with template weapons. You then got Marksman. Now, I like Marksman. It's a good skill. Basically, if the hit roll for an attack made by this fighter is a natural 6, you get extra damage. So you get to add 1 damage, or is it double damage? Natural 6. They score a critical hit, and the weapon's damage is doubled. So if you hit with a plasma gun on overcharge, that's 6 damage. Think about that. Just don't roll a 1 on the ammo. But yeah, really cool. And you're also not affected by the rules for target priority, so you can just shoot anywhere on the board freely without having to take a pull check. So I've got it on my Outlaw champion, Outcast champion. He's got a hot shot lasgun, and the amount of 6s I've rolled to hit, and I've been giving 2 damage at -1s. It's nasty. It's like a bolt gun, but more accurate. It's quite cool. So that's Marksman. We then got Precision Shot, which is if the hit roll for the ranged attack is a natural 6 when using a weapon that does not have the blast trait, the shot hits an exposed area and you don't get an armor save. So if you pair Precision Shot with Marksman, you've got no armor save, double damage. Oof, nasty. Two ones that go together really well. Like if you just put that on a lasgun, it makes the lasgun very scary all of a sudden. And lasguns are just great anyway, right? Last one in the bunch, we've got Trick Shot. Trick Shot means that it's kind of like an infrasight. So hard cover is reduced to soft cover is reduced to no minuses. So pretty cool. Pretty cool, that one. So I think you'd agree that all the shooting skills have their use. There isn't a bad one. There isn't a bad one. Like if you were rolling randomly on the shooting skills list, it's the one that has the most consistently good ones in there, I would say. Not the most powerful ones, but they're all good. They're all useful. So that's why Banter are a great game. Last, but by no means least, we have the Savant skill tree. Now the Savant skill tree is basically the... I don't really know how to describe the Savant skills, but they're kind of like the oddball, sort of like useful, like gang helpful skills, I suppose. Don't really know what to say on that. I'll just read them to you and you can see. First one is Ballistics Expert. When this fighter makes an aim basic action, make an intelligence check for them. If the check is passed, they gain an additional +1 to hit. That's pretty cool. You get +2 for aiming if you pass your intelligence. However, intelligence is a stat that is not that widely used generally. So most people don't go for intelligence increases, and a lot of fighters don't have intelligence higher than, say, 8, 7, something like that. It's okay. It's not great. You then got Connected. Connected means that you can make a trade action during the post-battle sequence in addition to any other actions they make, meaning they could even make 2 trade actions. So in our campaign, it doesn't actually do anything because we don't have trade actions. We have a trader that comes around each week with randomly selected wares that we have to pick in order of bottom gang rating up. So it's a bit more complex than that, but if you do that, if you do the normal stuff in your campaigns, then yeah, it's great. You can make 2 trade actions, but yeah, it's okay. It's not gonna like set the world on fire. You've then got Fixer. Fixer is quite useful in a campaign setting. It gives you D3 times 10 credits at the end of every game should you survive that game. So as long as you're not in recovery, basically. Now D3 and credits are like, you need credits in this game. I would say though, diverging a little bit, that the thing that I don't like the most about current Necromunda is there is too much money in it. It's an arms race a lot of the time, and we've done a lot in our campaign to stop that arms race happening. And yeah, D3 times 10 credits. D3 times 10 credits is always very useful, but depends on the type of campaign that you're in. It's nice to have though. It's really nice to have. Unless that fighter's always out of action and in recovery or injured all the time. Medicae, number 4, is when this fighter assists a friendly fighter who is making a recovery test, re-roll any out of action results. If the result of a re-rolled dice is also out of action, the result stands. So that's pretty cool. Quite useful. But again, like, it's not going to set the world on fire, is it? We've then got number 5, Munitioneer. When an ammo check is failed for this fighter or another fighter from their gang within 6 inches, it can be re-rolled. So I've seen this used to really good effect on heavy weapons, particularly, and really powerful, really powerful gun platforms and stuff. It can be really, really useful. It's not that fun, but it can be really useful on a heavy stubber or something like that. And when you're rolling lots of rapid fire dice as well, and you've got a higher chance of getting those ammo checks, it can be really useful for that. Last as well is Savvy Trader. Savvy Trader is when this fighter makes a trade action in the post-battle sequence, add 1 to the result of the dice roll to determine the availability of rare items. Additionally, the cost of one item may be reduced by 20 credits on the visit. Note that this means that one item, not one type of item, a single power sword may be purchased for 30 credits, but a second power sword will still cost the first 50. Will still cost 50 credits. Not very fun, but again, like, it gives you scope to do things in campaign and have more money, I guess. But anyway, that was a lot of talking. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you kind of got a good overview of the skills. If you're new to Necromunda, I think hopefully that will give you a little bit of knowledge on what skills are good, what skills are bad. Again, it's subjective to a certain degree, but that's my 2 cents after playing it a lot. There are obviously much better skills, and there are obviously much worse skills, and that was hopefully fairly straightforward for you to understand which trees are good and which skills are good within those trees and which ones to avoid, basically. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Again, if you disagree with me, please comment. I like discussion. Discussion is good. I may have missed something. I may have interpreted a rule wrong there, just skimming over it, of course. And a lot of these are just in my head. It's actually rare now that I look in a rule book, so I make a lot of mistakes these days purely because I never look in the rule book anymore. I just assume that I've got it all in my brain, but of course I haven't, and I should be more honest about that. But there you go. We all love Necromunda, and hopefully I can bring some more cool content to you on the next thing I'm going to do actually is go through all of the weapons and equipment in the entire game, starting with basic weapons next, I believe. And then we'll go through all the weapon categories, onto the equipment, and so on and so forth. So that will be cool. I'm looking forward to doing it, but thanks for tuning in, and peace out.